Before I start, I would like to apologize if I would start sneezing or coughing. When I came here, I got like really bad cold. So if something happens to me, I would drop unconscious or something. Just don't worry. Right? Don't worry about it. I'm Anton, and I've been in the video games industry for a while. And I probably have my name in the credits for some of those very cool games like Kingdom Come Deliverance, Ancestor's Legacy, Metro 2033, The Witcher, and many, many others, to be very honest. Now I work for 1C Publishing. It's one of the bigger video games publishers in Europe. And what I do is I look for content. I sign up independent games. I sign up large projects. So I'm the kind of guy you would pitch your game to if you're looking for a publisher. And like I said, I've been around for a while, and this is an early photograph of me visiting Tokyo Game Show. I've been working very hard all of these years. Right? This is basically how I've been working. And sorry, I have to move around all the time. And today I would like to point your attention to the fact that I'm going to be talking about PC games, right? So PC, console games, bigger games, not so much about mobile games. So I think a lot of things I'm going to tell you about are applicable when you are trying to get a deal for a mobile game, but some things might work a little bit different in that industry. I'm personally not doing mobile games much. So, as you may know, what's been happening in the video games industry is that the tools have become widely available and very, very good. And that's one of the reasons why you guys here are also making video games. Something that 15, 20, 25 years ago was a thing only for cool kids in the US and Europe. Right now everyone can make a video game. This is great. And with the tools, the global talent opened up, so you can have Argentinian guys working in companies all over the world, in the US and in Europe, or you guys can do outsourced work. And then the marketplace has changed as well, right? Now as an independent video game developer, you can publish your own game, not something that was possible some years ago. And this change in the industry basically led to just too many video games produced. Right? There are too many indie games produced. I got this number, 500 games released on Steam every month, but I think it's more now. I think it's really more. Some months are like 800 games, 850 games. The channel is completely saturated, so your game is probably not going to be very visible if you are not going to do a lot of coverage for it before you release it. And then we also used to have a lot of marketing tools in the video games industry, but for indie games, basically no marketing tools are available anymore. The only marketing tool, if your game is visible in the marketplace, like it's promoted on Steam with a banner, then you can sell. If it's not promoted, then you cannot sell. And about 5 years ago, a lot of really nice... I'm sorry, I forgot to change the slide. I'm changing that on my laptop, but I forget to change that on the big screen. So sorry about that, guys. So about 5 years ago, a lot of really nice guides started appearing on the web about how to make indie games, how to market indie games, how to get PR coverage for indie games, and you get some pretty detailed guidelines. And I'm sure a lot of you guys read these guidelines. And a lot of them promise pretty precise numbers of conversions and stuff like that. But in reality, on PC, only about 7% of games make enough money for studios to survive. I'm not going to go too much into detail about this because a lot of people talk about the state of industry before me, and you can find really great presentations that would discourage you from making video games online. But this is just, to give you an idea what kind of what kind of industry you're trying to be part of. It's incredibly competitive. Most probably you're going to fail, right? So only 7% succeed, more or less, and probably less than 1% succeed, really succeed commercially on the market. And I would like you to understand one thing is that you're going to have to, if you want to make an indie game, you're going to have to invest. You're going to have to invest a lot of time and a lot of cash, actually, to make a successful indie game. And here's why. So, since you're going to have to invest, you better maximize your chances for success. And one of the ways to do that is to try and get a publishing deal from a publisher, supposedly a professional company that publishes your game. Not all publishers are the same, but generally I would say statistically, publishers publish successful games and unsuccessful games. But with indie game developers, it's about 7% success. With publishers, it's about maybe 50-70% success. So it's quite a big of a difference. So you might want to sign up a publisher if you can. But if you think that publishers are waiting for your great game, and you got this great idea for a game that everybody should be hunting for, then basically that's not the case right now. Because there are a lot of indie game developers out there, and a lot of publishers are being pitched a lot of games. So you're going to be one of the many, many other companies. And if you pitch better than others, then you have better chances for success. Again, I forgot to change the slide. This is really inconvenient. All right, so the evil capitalist, everybody saw him, yeah? That's me. So I'm going to try to give you some practical advice about how to prepare for your video game pitch and actually production. Because I get indie game pitches all the time and many hundreds of games every year. So I know about the typical mistakes that indie game developers make. So I probably would just go and try to give you like a real practical advice, something you can take and use, rather than, talk about more complicated issues. So start by drafting GDD. Everybody knows what a GDD is, right? Because a lot of indie developers who pitched games to me didn't know what a GDD is. So that's game design document. This is supposedly a description of your entire project, right? So when you got GDD, that means that you know exactly what kind of games you're going to make, right? Because a lot of indie game developers, they would pitch their game to me and then they would tell me, yeah, but we can, make it smaller, or we can make it larger, or we can, change the setting, or we can do that. That's great when you're selling work for hire. This is great to be flexible, but when you are trying to create an indie game and get a publishing deal, that's the worst thing you can tell to the publisher, basically. Because then I would think you have no idea what kind of game you want to make. So you gotta make a GDD, right? And then maybe in case you close the deal, like a publishing deal, maybe you can be flexible later. But during the pitching process, you should really, during the pitching process, you should really stick to your concept and you should stick to your GDD. A good way to start, once you have the GDD and once you really know what kind of game you want to make, is to start working on materials. I had some meetings yesterday here with indie game developers from Argentina. Pretty much none of them had their materials ready for pitch. So you gotta work on your materials. And here I advise, and I will probably advise a couple of more times later in my talk, to get professional help. You can hire some of those guys called consultants in the video games industry. They can help you figure out what materials you need and how to make them well, right? But one thing you're definitely going to need is you're going to need so-called vertical slice. So this is a magical thing that basically is a demo of your game, which demonstrates 15-20 minutes of gameplay, but all the gameplay elements that you're going to have in the final game. So you got to have this demo, vertical slice. The chances that you will close any kind of deal or any kind of investment deal based on your sketches or based on your slides is pretty much zero. Pretty much zero. So again, you have to start investing early on. You actually have to build a game. You have to build vertical slides before you start pitching the game. And then if you have a playable demo, make sure you also have a playthrough video, which you will share with people alongside that demo. Because me, for example, I travel a lot. So if one of you guys would send me an email with just a playable demo today, then I'm probably never going to play your demo. But if you would send me a playthrough video, I can actually watch it on my iPhone later in the hotel as I drink scotch. So that's a really good idea, right? And then once you have the demo, once you have the vertical slides, it's a good idea to get your slides ready. So I have seen so many, slides, kind of like PowerPoint pitches for games, but not many of them were containing all the information they should contain. So number one, you need to have description. A lot of indie game developers do not or forget to put description of their game in their game pitch. I do not know why, but this is just happening. So you gotta have a description. Then you need to have product summary. What product summary is basically the price point that you have in mind, the platforms that you're aiming for, this kind of things, like when do you think you're going to have the game ready for distribution? As an indie game developer, you have to figure all of this out on your own before you start pitching the game. And then you should also understand the market very well. So you need to have an idea about market positioning. Like my game is similar to these games, and they are quite successful. And my game is something in between, Darkest Dungeon and Doom, whatever. And it's a mix of both things, and here's how it works. So think about market positioning and the price point that you think that makes sense. You have to be an expert in video games. You have to be a real expert in video games. And a lot of indie developers, they include the sales estimates. I'm going to talk later about this, why I do not like to get the sales estimates, but basically I have never seen any correct sales estimate from an indie game developer. They're extremely hard to make, and you cannot make them for every indie game, unfortunately. So just don't waste your time on this. Publishers, they can count probably better than you, when it comes to money at least. And then also should contain the budget, but we'll talk about this a little bit later because there are a lot of tricks to figuring out the budget. So this is a slide that I thought would kind of like give you a visual impression about sales estimates. So on this slide you got an iPhone X, which I personally own, and then there's a Chinese phone. They look almost the same. I don't even actually know which one is which on this photograph. So this Chinese phone, it looks exactly the same. It probably has competitive, hardware and software and stuff like this. So it must be selling as good as iPhone X, right? Well, surprise, surprise, it's not selling as well as iPhone X. So even when you have two items really close to each other, really almost identical, they are not going to perform in a similar way sales-wise. Same with your game. All right, the budget slide, right? It's a tricky one. So there are at least two schools of thought when it comes to asking for something or asking for money. One is like ask for more and then you'll get less. The other one is like ask for less, and if you can, get the partners stick to it, then maybe you can raise it later, like delay the development and stuff like this. So I suggest you really spend good amount of time thinking about your realistic budget. And unless you are really experienced salespeople and you're really good negotiators, don't ask for more and don't ask for less. Just ask for precisely the amount you need. Ask for precisely the amount you need. And don't try to trick anyone, because most probably you're going to end up being tricked anyway. Unless you really know what to do. I mean, some people really know what they do and they can negotiate budgets really well, but if you're an indie game developer, probably you're not one of these people. So try to figure out, when you're asking for a budget, try to figure out, are you really going to make it with this budget? Like really, really going to make it? Because if you will ask for less, for example, if you ask me for an amount which I will know you're not going to make it, then I would not consider you a reliable partner. Right? Because I would know. I have like many years of experience working with different studios. I know how production works very well. And these guys, these other guys you're going to pitch to, they would know that as well. They would know much more than you. So ask for only for what you have to get. That's my advice. Or hire professional help. People who know how to get things like this done. And then once you figure out the amount, just make sure your presentation is very clear. Because in many cases, indie developers they're getting extremely shy when they talk about money, and they ask you for an amount and then they send you an XLS. You cannot figure out anything from an XLS. It's so confusing. Just make sure your presentation is very clear. Where the numbers are coming from, right? And then make sure you got your milestones ready. Because nobody is going to just hand out full budget to you. All the payments will be coming to you in, in a sequence or in a chain of milestones. You achieve milestone, you get payment. So figure out how the payment schedules should look like for you and how the milestones could look like in your particular case so that you can manage. You have to know all of this, and you have to be able to put that in the slides in a very clear and understandable way. It's going to save tons of your time. So if you would do everything that I was talking about in the previous slides, then you should have your assets ready now. You got the GDD, which should be your fundamental starting point. Understanding what kind of game you want to make, describing that in the proper professional way, in the English language, obviously, in the GDD, and you're ready to share this GDD with the partner at any point, under NDA. And then you got your vertical slice build, really nice looking build, 15-20 minutes of gameplay, you got that, you're ready. And then you record the gameplay video of that vertical slice, and then you got your slides looking really nice, and you did include the product summary. You didn't forget to include this, it's in there. And then you figured out the budget, the milestones, and it's also in your slides. And only now you're basically ready to start pitching your game. That's a lot of work, right? A lot of work, but guess what? Nobody cares. And then you can turn to engagement. I'm only gonna, really scratch the surface about engagement. Once you're ready to pitch, there's the entire universe opens up to you in terms of how do you approach, how do you identify targets, how do you approach the targets with your pitch. And one advice I would give you is try to time your preparation cycle. What professional video game developers do is they would start working certain months of the year. So by Game Connection in Paris or by GDC in San Francisco, they have the vertical slice and all materials ready. You know what I'm saying? So they time their production in the way that they are ready to pitch once there's the best opportunity to pitch. So try to do that. That will really help you save a lot of time and many months of sending emails. Get professional help if you can. Right? Really advise getting professional help at the engagement stage. If you could hire a consultant who can pitch your game for you and already has the database of contacts, knows how to do it, like some guy who worked for a big publisher and now he's consultant. I know a couple of guys who work in Latin America doing this, like American guys. Other things that can help you with engagement also before you start pitching the game to publishers is get a little bit of press coverage. So if you can get some press coverage, if publishers would see this game is getting attention from press, it's kind of like an additional value for them. They see, well, maybe it's not going to be so hard to sell for me once I pay a certain amount of money for producing this game. And then some video game developers are so clever and know industry so well, they can actually run successful crowdfunding campaigns. And if you run a successful crowdfunding campaign, that's a big plus for you. Don't go for large amounts like $50,000 or something is okay as long as it's successful. That's like an additional value for you, for your project before you can start pitching it. But if it's not going to be successful, then it's kind of like a black mark. So be mindful about that. And then you have to structure your work, right? When you start engagement, you should start by identifying targets, right? Who are these people, investors and publishers? Who are particularly these companies that I could potentially pitch to? Try to make a list. It's not so hard. Just think about the companies that publish games that you love to play. Right? If you only play AAA games, then maybe it could be hard, but maybe you play some indie games as well. So check out who published them. Maybe there could be some synergy. Maybe you're making something similar. Or again, if you don't have any network, if you don't have any opportunity to reach out to publishers, then you need to try to do things like LinkedIn. That's the social network, professional social network. You can engage people there quite effectively if you know how to do it. Then there is a service called unoya.com. It's a website where you can put your game for free, and publishers will see your game and might get interested. And then definitely, trade shows like Game Connection. Game Connection is perfect for making deals because you can do a lot of meetings. There's a Game Connection in the US and in Europe. So trade shows where you can come, set up your meetings with publishers, or actually meet these people and try to pitch your games to them. It's really, the engagement subject is so huge. Like I said, I can only start scratching surface on this, but if you would do all this or some of this, I think it could make your life much easier. And then if you got the publishing deal, then the real fight begins, obviously, because you have to make the game. And well, again, all right, the real fight begins, if you guys know what I mean. And that's it. That's the entire presentation. So you can ask questions now, guys.